Everyone believed Bing Crosby and Bob Hope were best friends. Their comedy was perfect. Their chemistry was natural, but it was all an act. In 1962, when they filmed their last road movie together, something had changed. Crosby was focused on his empire and new family. Hope was just going through the motions. What had happened between these two men? The answer lies in a secret that Hollywood tried to bury. Their friendship was never real. It was always just business, and business was about to end badly. Harry Lillis Crosby was born on May 3, 1903, in Tacoma, Washington. He came into the world in a modest home his father built at 1112 North J Street. His father worked as a brewery bookkeeper, barely earning enough to care for 7 children. His mother was a second-generation Irish-American who loved music. For years, the family moved from one rented house to another until they finally built their own home in 1913. It's almost hard to believe that this boy, born into working-class poverty, was a descendant of Mayflower passenger William Brewster and would one day sell more than 300 million records. The boy everyone called Harry would eventually become Bing, one of the most famous names in American entertainment. The nickname came when he was 7. He was obsessed with a comic strip called The Bingville Bugle in the Spokesman Review. It was a parody of small-town newspapers and made him laugh until his sides hurt. A neighbor, Valentine Hobart, started calling him Bingo from Bingville. Soon, it was shortened to Bing. The name stuck for life, though his mother never stopped calling him Harry. Few could have guessed that a little-known comic strip would give birth to a stage name worth millions. In 1906, the family moved to Spokane. The neighborhood was known as the Little Vatican because so many Catholic families lived there. Gonzaga University and Gonzaga High School were just blocks away, and both were run by Jesuits. Bing became an altar boy at St. Aloysius Church at 13. Almost everyone he grew up with went through Catholic schooling from start to finish. His parents even bought a phonograph, which introduced him to Al Jolson, his first musical idol. In 1920, Crosby enrolled at Gonzaga University to study law, just like his older brothers. But his real passion was music. Without telling his parents, he bought a mail-order drum set and practiced until he could join a band called the Musicalators. They earned more than most college graduates could hope for, and Crosby decided to drop out just 2 months before graduation. He had been a strong student, once giving a graduation speech called The Purpose of Education. He was also a talented athlete, winning 7 swimming and diving medals in 1915 and playing varsity baseball. His parents thought he was on the path to a respectable legal career. Instead, he was plotting a very different future. On October 15, 1925, Crosby and his friend Al Rinker set out for Los Angeles in a battered 1916 Model T Ford. They had little money and big dreams. The trip was chaotic. They stopped in Seattle to audition for hotel bands, visited speakeasies in Portland and San Francisco, and even played a week in a Tacoma theater. Their car broke down near Bakersfield, and Rinker's sister, Mildred Bailey, had to rescue them. That breakdown changed everything. Bailey got them an audition with the Fanchone and Marco Theatrical Company, which booked them for 40 West Coast theaters at $75 per week each. A year later, Crosby would be part of Paul Whiteman's famous orchestra in New York. In 1926, Whiteman offered Crosby and Rinker $150 a week. At the time, most Americans earned about $25 to $30, but Crosby's drinking soon caused problems. He was arrested multiple times for drunk driving and once had to be brought to a film set in handcuffs while serving time for an accident. Whiteman's gamble could have ended in disaster, but it launched Crosby's career. Their first recording session almost ruined it. In 1926, Crosby and Rinker recorded I've Got the Girl with Don Clark's orchestra, but the engineer recorded it at the wrong speed. The playback made their voices sound high and comical. In an era where bad first impressions could kill a career, it was a humiliating moment. Crosby learned from it, developing the studio discipline that would later make him the most successful recording artist of his time. In 1927, Harry Barris joined the group and they became the Rhythm Boys. Barris was a songwriter who created hits like Mississippi Mud, At Your Command, and I Surrender Dear. His songs helped shape Crosby's career, but disputes over money and credit eventually strained their partnership. During these years, the Rhythm Boys toured with jazz legends like Bix Beiderbecke, Tommy and Jimmy Jimmy Dorsey, Jack Teagarden, and Hoagie Carmichael. Crosby soaked up the improvisational style of jazz, but he also adopted the hard-drinking lifestyle that came with it. These connections cemented his reputation as more than just a pop singer. By 1929, tensions with Whiteman were high. Crosby's behavior led to their firing after King of Jazz, but they were soon rehired for $900 a week on the Old Gold Radio Hour. In July 1930, they joined Gus Arnheim's orchestra at the Coconut Grove, a move that betrayed their contract but gave Crosby massive exposure. By May 1931, they walked out of the Coconut Grove claiming their contract had expired, even though it still had 9 months left. It burned bridges, but it also proved that Crosby was willing to take risks to control his career. Bing Crosby married actress Dixie Lee on September 29, 1930, despite friends warning him about her drinking. At first, it looked like a perfect Hollywood match. Dixie had just signed with Fox Studios in 1929, but in 1935, she left acting to raise their 4 sons. Bing gave up drinking after they married, but Dixie's addiction grew worse. While he was away performing, she drank heavily, often to the point of passing out. The damage ran deep. Specialists at USC later studied old photographs and believed their twin sons, Dennis and Philip, were born with fetal alcohol syndrome. Dixie's life spiraled between isolation and illness until she died of ovarian cancer in 1952. In May 1931, Crosby signed with comedy producer Max Sennett. The Rhythm Boys, his group with Al Rinker and Harry Barris, were earning $1,000 a week together. Days later, they quit their Coconut Grove contract, but Sennett cut the deal to $600 a week for Crosby alone. His former partners accused him of betrayal, claiming he stole their material. Crosby went on to make 6 comedy shorts for Sennett, starting with I Surrender Dear in September 1931. They became big hits, timed perfectly with his booming record sales, but the friendship with the Rhythm Boys never recovered. His big solo break on radio almost fell apart before it began. On August 31st, 1931, CBS had him booked for his own 15-minute show at $2,500 a week. After rehearsing all afternoon in an air-conditioned studio, he developed severe laryngitis. He missed the second night too, leading to rumors he was drunk or too nervous. He finally made it on air on September 2nd, singing Just One More Chance, I Found a $1 Million Baby, and I'm Through with Love. The show took off instantly, making him a national star within weeks. That same year, Crosby dominated the charts like no one before him. He had 10 songs in the top 50 at once, including Out of Nowhere and At Your Command. Several went to #1, and rival singers complained it was impossible to compete. A fake battle of the baritones with Russ Columbo fizzled quickly when it was clear Crosby was untouchable. His record sales during the Depression were so strong that engineer Steve Hoffman later said Crosby's agreement to sell singles for 35 cents with Decca founder Jack Kapp saved the entire record industry from collapse. In 1932, Crosby starred in The Big Broadcast, a comedy about a late radio star, eerily similar to his own real-life radio troubles. The movie's success led to a relentless pace of 3 films a year, a weekly 1-hour radio show, and constant touring. The workload brought in millions in today's money, but left him exhausted. He turned to alcohol and stimulants to keep going, while his long absences worsened Dixie's drinking. Late in 1934, Crosby made a historic deal with Jack Kapp at Decca Records. Record sales had crashed from $110 million in 1921 to $10 million in 1933, and most labels refused to cut prices. Crosby backed Kapp's idea to sell singles for 35 cents and switch to royalties instead of flat fees. This bold move made music affordable during the Depression and created the royalty system still used today. That same year, on July 13th, Crosby and Dixie welcomed twins Dennis Michael and Philip Lang. His career was exploding, but his time at home was limited. Dixie faced the pressures of raising children while battling alcoholism. Both twins followed their father into entertainment, but faced their own struggles. Dennis died by suicide in 1991 at 56, and Philip died of a heart attack in 2004 at 69. On January 1936, Crosby took over NBC's Kraft Music Hall from Paul Whiteman, moving the show from New York to Hollywood. It became one of radio's longest longest-running star shows, lasting until 1946. The mix of music, comedy, and Crosby's easy style made it a hit while allowing him to balance film work with radio. In February 1937, Crosby launched the first Crosby Pro-Am golf tournament at Rancho Santa Fe Golf Club. With sponsor money scarce during the Depression, he personally put up $3,000 for the pros. Stars like Fred Astaire and Alan Hale played alongside golf legends like Sam Snead, who won with a score of 68. The format became the famous AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am. By 1939, Crosby's dominance reached new heights with 24 separate chart singles in 1 year. His music filled the airwaves, frustrating rivals who couldn't get airtime. This capped his first 5 years with Decca and set the tone for his reign through the 1940s. The first time audiences saw Bing Crosby and Bob Hope together on screen was in 1940, when Road to Singapore premiered on March 13th at the Paramount Theater in New York City. The movie became an instant hit, starting one of Hollywood's most successful film series. Yet the partnership almost never happened. The project was first offered to Fred MacMurray and Jack Oakey under the title Road to Mandalay, then to George Burns and Gracie Allen as Beach of Dreams. Only after both pairs turned it down did Paramount put the two radio rivals together. Filming began on October 2, 1939, and wrapped by December, with jungle scenes shot at the Los Angeles County Arboretum. The chemistry looked effortless, but they had performed together years earlier in vaudeville, so the pairing was more calculated than accidental. The film ranked number 17 among the top-grossing movies of 1940 in the United States, proving the gamble had worked. 5 years later, Crosby made history. On March 15, 1945, he became the first professional singer to win the Academy Award for Best Actor, earning it for his role as Father Chuck O'Malley in Going My Way. The film won 7 of its 10 nominations, including Best Picture. Crosby almost missed the ceremony. He was on the golf course, casually dressed and without his toupee, when word reached him. His mother's warning that he would never hear the end of it if he skipped convinced him to hurry to Grauman's Chinese Theater. Gary Cooper handed him the award, and Crosby joked, "I couldn't be more surprised if I won the Kentucky Derby." Ironically, he had resisted taking the role at first, uneasy about playing a priest. Yet it became the defining moment of his acting career and helped make him Hollywood's top box office draw. From 1944 to 1948, Crosby's dominance was unmatched. No other actor had ever been the #1 box office attraction for 5 years in a row. His peak came in 1946, when 3 of the year's 5 highest-grossing films were his. The Bells of St. Mary's earned $8 million, Blue Skies, and Road to Utopia. Those 3 alone brought in $18 million in rentals. That same year, Ingrid Bergman topped him in profits only because she had 4 films earning a combined $21.75 million. Hollywood had its most profitable year ever in 1946, with 19 films making over $4 million each, a record at the time. Over his career from 1932 to 1972, Crosby starred in 55 feature films, and an astonishing 29 landed in the top 10 for their release year. By 1948, his fame had reached a point few could match. That year, American polls named him the most admired man alive, placing him above Jackie Robinson and even Pope Pius IX. His music was everywhere. Music Digest estimated that his songs made up more than half of the 80,000 weekly hours of recorded music played on U.S. radio. During World War II, Yank magazine credited him with boosting soldiers' morale more than anyone else, and he raised $14.5 million in war bonds. By 1960, he had sold 200 million records. He was simultaneously the biggest star in film, radio, and music, a level of cultural dominance that few have ever matched. Yet the adoration hid a darker truth about his private life, one carefully shielded from public view. That contrast had been there for years. In 1937, the press named him Hollywood's most typical father, a label that would later seem painfully ironic. At home, Crosby was often absent, and when present, he was a strict, cold disciplinarian. His marriage to Dixie Lee, beginning in 1930, was troubled by her struggle with alcoholism alcoholism. She died of ovarian cancer in 1952 at just 42. Their 4 sons all battled alcoholism as adults. 2 of them, Lindsay and Dennis, died by suicide in 1989 and 1991. Gary Crosby, the eldest, revealed in his 1983 memoir, Going My Own Way, that their home life was marked by fear, control, and emotional distance. While audiences saw Crosby play warm, compassionate father figures on screen, his own children carried scars from an upbringing that left them with deep emotional wounds and a legacy of pain. Bing Crosby's life looked polished on the surface, but behind the charm and music was a web of secrets, risk, and ambition. In late 1944, while filming Duffy's Tavern, he began a romance with 22-year-old actress Joan Caulfield. It wasn't a quiet fling. By 1945, their connection was intense enough for friends to notice, and actress Patricia Neal later revealed Joan's heartbreak over loving an older married man as famous as Gary Cooper. FBI files and even diary entries from 2 sisters who followed them around show the couple going to theater, opera houses, and expensive dinners in New York. Joan's mother sometimes came along, but the seriousness of their relationship was clear. Paramount even announced 3 more films for the pair before their previous ones had hit theaters. Gambling was another part of Crosby's double life. FBI records detail how in 1930 he owed thousands to mob-connected figures, once paying a single gangster $10,000. He got death threats demanding $6,000, including 1 note filled with hatred and promises of violence. His gambling habits landed him in an illegal Burbank gambling den with Bob Hope, where both men were quietly allowed to leave while 100 other patrons faced arrest. His finances were sometimes so thin that he had to borrow from friends like Frank Sinatra to cover debts. In 1948, Crosby made a move that would change the entertainment industry. He sent Ampex a $50,000 check with no note, funding the creation of the first practical magnetic tape recorder. That's $1.1 million in today's money. The technology let him pre-record radio shows, edit mistakes, and free his schedule for travel, gambling, and social life. He gained exclusive distribution rights west of the Mississippi for Ampex recorders and 3M tape, making a fortune from the very technology he helped develop. His home life with his first wife, Dixie Lee, was filled with strain. She battled alcoholism throughout their marriage and once nearly died after an apparent overdose in January 1945. She passed away from ovarian cancer on November 1, 1952, just 3 days shy of her 43rd birthday. Experts later suspected their twin sons showed signs of fetal alcohol syndrome. Crosby had even considered divorce in 1941 because of her drinking, but her death ended a troubled marriage that had become a public relations problem for him. There were also moments when his connections turned dangerous. FBI files describe an incident where, after an all-night drinking binge with criminals, Crosby went into a rage at a nightclub. 2 armed men restrained him, while others forced a witness into a car, handcuffed him, drove at high speed, and beat him. His friendships with mobsters and his habit of paying them off were well known to the Bureau, and J. Edgar Hoover kept personal watch over his activities. In 1954, Crosby met 23-year-old Catherine Grant while she was interviewing him during the filming of White Christmas. He was 54. They married in 1957 after she converted to Catholicism, and they had 3 children, each of whom built their own careers in acting or sports. Catherine spoke later about the challenges of being married to someone with traditional expectations in a changing era. Even as she pursued her own film career, Crosby's wealth grew through business ventures far beyond music and film. He bought a 25% stake in the Pittsburgh Pirates in 1946, owned television stations in Los Angeles and Portland, and developed affiliates near his alma mater. His horse racing and other entertainment investments added millions more. His forward-thinking approach extended to television production. On November 11, 1951, his company demonstrated the first videotape recording system. The early version was blurry, but by 1952, it had improved enough to impress the press. press. Crosby understood that owning his shows and being able to record them on his own terms would pay off for decades. And it did. Even his famous partnership with Bob Hope eventually faded. By the time they filmed The Road to Hong Kong in 1962, their friendship had cooled into a purely professional arrangement. Dorothy Lamour was barely featured, the jokes felt scripted, and the easy charm of earlier films was gone. For Crosby, the focus had shifted. The man who sang White Christmas to millions was now just as invested in his empire, his new family, and protecting the carefully crafted image that hid the chaos behind the scenes. Between 1960 and 1977, Bing Crosby kept a strict ritual for his eldest son, Gary, that was as humiliating as it was cruel. Every week, Gary had to step on the scales under his father's cold gaze. If the numbers didn't please him, Gary was sent straight to his father's office for a whipping. Crosby didn't stop at private punishment. In front of strangers, he called Gary names like bucket butt, satchel ass, and my fat-assed kid. Gary later admitted he had a broad backside as a child that drove his father crazy. These weigh-ins always ended with tears and left Gary linking food with shame and pain for the rest of his life. The damage lingered for decades, feeding eating disorders and crippling his confidence. The Crosby home was ruled by fear. The four boys lived under a constant threat of violence. Gary recalled how his father would come home at 6 o'clock, and within minutes he would hear what Gary had done. Then came the beating, pants down, bent over, lashed until he bled. Crosby was never out of control. He was calm, almost mechanical. Over time, the punishment grew harsher. He moved from belts to canes. In one beating, he held the cane like a baseball bat and struck Gary 13 times. Even small mistakes could bring public shame. Sometimes, the children had to wear their underwear around their necks until bedtime, a punishment their father mockingly called the Crosby lavalier. Dennis summed it up simply. He got the first licking, and we got the second. All four sons from his first marriage turned to alcohol as adults. Their mother, Dixie Lee, had died at 41 from complications of alcoholism in 1952. The boys followed the same path. Gary, Dennis, Philip, and Lindsay each drank heavily to numb the pain of their upbringing. For two of them, the drinking ended in tragedy. Lindsay took his own life in 1989 at 51. Dennis did the same in 1991 at 56. Philip, believed to have suffered from fetal alcohol syndrome, died of a heart attack in 1994. Gary eventually sought help, joined Alcoholics Anonymous, and spoke publicly about his addiction before dying of lung cancer in 1995 at 62. None escaped the shadow of their childhood. Even as his sons battled addiction and depression, Crosby stayed emotionally distant. Gary said trying to connect with him was like dealing with a frigging mop. Instead of warmth, Crosby gave them financial rules. He set up trust funds they could not touch until 65. Philip once said, "My father thought, how much trouble will they be able to get into then?" They lived off monthly checks from their mother's trust fund, unable to keep steady jobs. The arrangement kept them dependent and reminded them who was in control. Even as Dennis and Lindsay's lives unraveled, Crosby remained the same cold figure they had feared as children. In September 1977, Crosby recorded his last album, Seasons, over 3 days in London. It would be released after his death with the tagline, "The Closing Chapter." In early October, he finished a sold-out 2-week run at the London Palladium, followed by his final concert in Brighton on October 10th. Just 3 days before his death, he recorded 8 songs and gave a BBC interview with the Gordon Rose Orchestra. Listeners had no idea they were hearing the end of a 50-year career. On October 13th, he flew to Madrid for a long weekend of golf and hunting. The next day, at La Moraleja Golf Course, he played 18 holes with champion Manuel Pinheiro. Crosby was in high spirits and even sang "Strangers in the Night" to construction workers at the 9th hole. After winning the match by 1 stroke, he walked toward the clubhouse and said his last words. "That was a great game of golf, fellas. Let's go have a Coca-Cola." Just 20 yards from the entrance, he collapsed and died instantly from a heart attack at 74. His widow later said it was the perfect way for a golfer who sang for a living to go. Bob Hope's reaction to the news was surprisingly cold. After decades of working together, all he said was, he was a great partner. No tribute, no fond memories. Later, it emerged that Hope had admitted to friends that he never really liked Crosby and sometimes detested him. Their friendship, it seemed, had always been for business, not brotherhood. Crosby's second wife, Catherine, later spoke about their marriage. She said he wooed her with love letters that convinced her to give up her career and focus on domestic life. She was 30 years younger, and Crosby preferred her to fit his ideal of the perfect wife. She even took cooking and interior design classes for him. Catherine said he admired strong women like his mother, who ran their family without question. While she defended the love in their marriage, she also admitted he expected tradition, control, and a home that revolved around him.